There we go. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Women's Maximum Fitness Podcast. I am super excited to have Miss Olympia 2020, Andrea Shaw, with me today. A fellow Michigander. How are you doing?
Yes, I am still allowing it to sink in. It still hasn't sunk in yet, but I mean, I'm doing really, really good.
That's awesome. It was so exciting. I watched, I hadn't watched the live stream in a couple of years, and it's been 5 years since I've actually been to an Olympia to watch, but two of my absolute favorites, because I love Margie, and just the two of you, I was just like, wow, this could go either way. It was so exciting.
Oh, and I mean, she's the veteran, right? So it was like, okay, when I knew it was us two, I was like, oh man, okay. It
was
but we keep in touch, so it's not, it was like being up there with a friend, like somebody I know, right? Because she was one of the young ladies who, when I first got into bodybuilding, she approached me like, hey, she was a bit gruff. That's Margie. And she asked me, who told you to get up there with those women's physique girls? Who told you with your big old body to get up there with those women's physique girls? And I'm stating that as the clean version. Okay.
Right.
So that you, that's Margie.
Yeah, she tells it like it is. Margie doesn't paint any pictures. Yeah.
That's right. Straight shooter.
Absolutely. So this is really interesting to me because a couple of years ago, so you know who Mike Vrujink is? He's one of the judges and the promoters here at Michigan. Yeah, and so
I
for
love
a while, amazing guy. And for a while, he was coming to me for helping him get women guest posers for the Grand Rapids show. And so the last one, I asked him if he needed anybody because Autumn Swanson came and Kira Newman and then Brooke Walker. And so I asked him and he said to me, this was like 2 years ago. He goes, well, I think I'm going to have Drea Shaw come. And this is how bad things are in Michigan, because I didn't even know who you were. And I was just like, I don't know. And so I kind of looked and I was like, wow, she's big. She's women's physique. Okay. So that's kind of where you had been competing. So let's go back. So what is your athletic background and how did you get into this? And I just am shocked now that you're 37. I totally thought that you were like maybe 30 years old. And I thought, man, that's a ton of muscle to be putting on in this amount of time. So what's your athletic
background? I've been at it a while. I've been at it quite a while. So with my athletic background, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, when you're that young, it doesn't really make any difference. But I think for me, it definitely made a difference. When I was like 6, 7, 8, my mom started me out in ballet, gymnastics, and tap dance. Yeah. We did okay with tap, but I really hung and clung to gymnastics.
Okay.
Fast forward a couple years, once I got into 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, I got into cheer. So it was a really easy segue from gymnastics into cheer. Then in high school, I kind of backed off of the athletics. I got more into academics in high school. And then after high school, it was like, ooh, okay, you got that freshman 15. For some people, it's like the freshman 20. And it was like, ooh, okay. And I had always been like around the gym because my mom was a trainer. And we used to train at a little powerhouse in a small city called Centerline. And that's kind of where, I would go to the gym with her and I would tinker around with, so some things just came easy. I just knew, certain things about how to set up equipment, how to, put your body into this position for this exercise. And it was like, okay, I'd always been in the gym, but like at 18, 19, I said, you know what, I think I probably need to at least start going and doing something on my own. Yeah. So I did. I was hit and miss. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go every day. I'm gonna go 7 days a week. And it was like, I would go for 3 and then I was off for 4. And then I would go for 2 and then I was off for a month. I would say my turning point probably came when I was 21. And I said, you know what? I could do better than this. I got to that point where, you know, as a young woman, I was looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, you know, I'm not happy with what I see. And knowing that I had the background from cheer, I'm like, okay, I know I can do better than this. So that's when I would say, that's when I officially say my journey started. So I started, you know, looking at Oxygen magazine. I mean, that was a huge magazine for me. Muscle and Fitness, Hers, Shape, but I was really heavy into the ones that had physiques that looked more like mine, muscular physiques. Yeah. And I said, you know, if I could just get into one of these magazines one day, that would be awesome. And so I reached out to Robert Kennedy, who was the editor at that time, or / owner of the magazine. And he's like, well, you know, we do, I'm like, how do you get your girls? And he's like, well, we do a lot of appearances at, you know, shows. And that's how we, you know, can see, you know, which girls are in great shape. We get a chance to talk to them. And I said, okay, well, sounds like if I want to be in one of these magazines, I better get into, you know, doing a show. Yeah. And March of 2008, I entered my first show here in Michigan at the Karen Zaremba Classic. Okay. So that was my very first show. And I mean, I wonder where she is now, because she, you know, she's not involved in the circuit anymore, but you know, her putting on that show made a, you know, a huge, you know, difference in my life, because it was an opportunity. And then I think it was July of the same year, I stepped on stage again in the Michigan Natural as a figure competitor. Learning lessons. So I placed at both shows. So I knew I was working with something. See, like I had a knowing that I had a good foundation, but I definitely was too big for figure because I was the quadzilla on stage. I mean.
So already you were too big. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. So yeah. Do you feel like you knew what you were doing, or this was just like, now you're like, now I got to try to find somebody who's going to help me? Was your mom helping you during this time?
She was not. She was supportive, but she was not helping me. I did bring in John to help me with my legs, but because I always felt like I had a pretty solid upper body. After my first show, I kind of knew, all right, if I'm going to get back into this, I got to start training my upper body a little bit more. And my upper body develops really fast. But I knew that I needed help with my legs. So insert John. And I would go to John usually maybe like once or twice a week while I was in prep. I mean, while I wasn't in prep, it was kind of a random. And, you know, if I wanted a really hard workout because I felt like I had been slacking, or, you know, but he was always there. And he started to help me a little bit with my posing. But then I knew after that second show, I said, you know what? There was a guy who used to run a nutrition shop in Flint that I was going to. And he really, I mean, he put me on a super, super strict diet. I mean, I was hungry. And I still got on stage and I was too big for figure. And it was like, I was doing cardio 3 times a day. I was eating egg whites, 1 cup of lettuce, 2 ounces of tuna. I mean, I just felt like I was going against the grain, and I knew that I was not going to be as successful as I wanted to be. So I was a little upset. One of my friends called me yesterday and he's like, you know, I remember how you were after that show. You were just so like, just discouraged. We'd never seen you like that. And I mean, a lot of people had told me, you know, maybe competing's not for you. And, you know, I kind of listened, I mean, with a somewhat of a grain of salt. I took it with a grain of salt, like, you know, not right now. So I shifted my focus. I got enrolled in school. And I started to just study, you know, different exercises. I went to school at Wayne State for exercise science. And that's when, hi, John. This is Deborah. You know her. She's Buff Cake on Instagram. I was just talking about you. Hello. You remember her?
Hey, how you doing?
The coach of all coaches. So yes, he would help me with my legs during the figure show. And then I was able to get back to his show in 2016. And I knew then, I said, okay, John, why don't you take a look at me and I'll bring my figure heels. And I said, you know, I'll do some women's physique poses. You coach me through, and then you tell me which division you think I should be in. And what did you tell me?
Get rid of the shoes.
Yeah.
Get rid of the shoes.
Deborah.
keep hitting one of my clinics.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So he's in between clients, but I'm glad I at least got him to come on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story. He just kind of blasted my figure dream and said, yeah, you can get rid of those shoes. Like, no, you're all set.
I feel like most of the women I know are pretty happy to get rid of, like, that's one of the things they love about women's physique and bodybuilding is not having to wear the shoes, because it's just trying to wear them out on the stage is very difficult.
Oh yeah. And even the girls that I have, that I've coached a little bit with, posing, it's like, girls, pay attention to where you're walking.
Yeah.
Bring paper towel, bring like alcohol or wipes so you can wipe the bottoms. And it was like, as soon as I had told the girl that backstage, she almost slipped and fell. And I tried to tell her,
the little heels will catch on the carpet. People try to take too long steps and then it skids from under them. So it's just like,
yeah. And then they're falling over like trees. Timber.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. I tell girls all the time that they have to be an extension of your foot, and you got to be wearing them all the time so that you're comfortable in the shoes, because people try to throw them on last minute and learn how to walk
right.
in heels.
And I try to tell these girls, like, you need to be getting those shoes, practice at home.
Yeah.
The most recent girl that I put in a figure show, actually she was the first girl I put in a figure show back in 2018. She won the Powerhouse Classic. And she thought I was joking. I said, no, I had to put her on a deadline. I said, you've got 1 week to order these shoes.
Yeah.
Or we're done. Yeah. And she's like, are you really going to do that? Yes. Because you need to be ready.
It's true. You work so hard for this physique, and then you destroy it by going out there and demolishing your posing and your presentation. You can't do it. So yeah.
Exactly. Oh, the things we could write a book on and tell competitors about what not to do.
It's very true. There's a lot of things, and you don't always think of everything, but that trifecta of your diet, your training, and your posing is, I mean, they're all equally important, they're all thirds.
Exactly. And no one can ever be, outweighed by another. And with the proper planning, you can execute on them all equally. But again, you have to be honest about how much time you can really commit. So that's one thing that I think, if I had to go back and maybe advise my younger self, I would tell myself, you know what, you can plan this better if you would take the time and be more realistic, right, about what it is that you can and cannot do. So by the time I got to that second show, it was definitely, by the time I got to women's physique, it was definitely more apparent that, I definitely was in the right division. Yeah. I was able to actually bring in a better physique, but I still needed to work on my legs. And had I given myself more time to work on my legs, I probably would have placed a little bit higher. So, I mean, fourth place wasn't bad, but I knew it wasn't my best. And again, I knew that planning, it really, I mean, that's why even now I try to sit down with John after every show to talk about, what the game plan is. How many weeks do you think we need? And every time he asks me or tells me how many weeks, I always add on 2 more weeks. Right. He knows I'm going to do it. So that's just, I always do that just to make sure that you've got a little bit of a buffer, because, you have to try to account for, certain things that you just can't control.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah. Stresses happen. This whole 2020 taught us you can't plan for shit.
Oh my gosh, girl. I mean, you just leaning on God's grace. Like, okay, I'm going to try to plan for this, but, hey, can you please?
Right.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah. And 2019 was definitely a kickoff, but 2020 was like, okay, that was a test of true faith and endurance, because, you got a plan in place, but you just had to try to be flexible as best as you could.
So I want to ask you about how things were training during the pandemic, but I wanted to clarify. So what do you mean about you had to work on your legs? Were you just not lean enough, or did you not have the size? What were
Definitely always had the size. So my legs have, John had to actually stop me from squatting.
Okay.
He's like, you know, we don't need to add more mass to your legs, please. So we really got more focused on making sure that you can see the separation in the muscle, or we call it clarity. So yeah, how clearly can I see that definition in the muscle? So he said, you know, you have really dense muscle, especially in your legs. So we have to really dial that part in with isolation training. So we got more into leg extensions, all types of variations for hamstrings. But again, these were isolation movements. And then we started adding on more days per week that I was doing legs. So on average, 3 days a week became, you know, and that was, I mean, I was used to twice a week. And that's usually my program. I mean, I always aim to work each body part twice a week.
Sure.
But adding in that extra day for legs, you know, planning, right? So that's where, you know, I had to make sure that, you know, when it came to me tracking my exercises, I started using my planner. At first, I used to keep a separate planner, but that became like too much. Okay, this planner there, that planner here. I just put it all in one planner, and then I can track, you know, which exercises I did, so I can keep certain ones in rotation, especially with the glutes and the hamstrings, because, you know, leg extensions are just what they are. Lunges just are what they are. But yeah, those hamstrings, whether it was a prone curl, seated curl, standing leg curl, cable deadlifts, I just needed to make sure I could put it on paper so I can see where I was, you know, for my week.
So, so you were probably doing more of a progressive overload at this point because you were getting a little bit more volume. Were these isolation exercises more volume, or were
Definitely.
you following the same program, trying to do more reps or do more weight every time when you trained? Were you also doing that?
I was up until a certain point where we were roughly about maybe 6 to 8 weeks out. By that time, you know, it's definitely not as much about heavyweight as it's more about, you know, the higher repetitions at a moderate weight. It shouldn't be so light that you can't, you know, get, you know, enough blood pumped into the muscle, but it needs to be light enough where you can still get, you know, full extension and contraction and feel that pump.
Dre, you are just a genetic freak then, it seems like.
That is what my coach has told me. He's like, okay, you're like little Ronnie.
Seriously. Absolutely. So what else I wanted to ask you, when you did that figure competition, so what was your stage weight and how tall are you?
I'm 5'5.5", and my stage weight was 140 pounds.
Okay.
And I was still super massive on stage with these girls. And, you know, the genetics just are what they are. Like, I've always had really big legs. Like, I get that from my dad's side of the family. My mom laughs at me. She said, I tell her I get my good looks from your side of the family, and then I get all the muscle from dad's side of the family. But like my dad's mom, I mean, even up until her late 60s, she had these really big calves, really big quads, and really big hamstrings. They're just really solid, like muscular people.
Nice.
So yeah, even my dad, I mean, he would destroy jeans. Oh gosh, what are jeans? Like we don't wear jeans because they just don't fit at all.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh.
I like jeans, but yeah, they don't like me back.
So what did you weigh for the Olympia when you won? What was your stage?
So before I left, we weighed me in at 168. And we are guessing that probably by the time I, you know, depleted the water, added in the carbs, I probably landed somewhere between like 174, 175.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So from your figure competition, which was how many years is that then that has gone by? From how long was it from your figure competition until this year? That first
so that was 11 years.
11 years. 11 years.
Yeah. And I took an 8-year break in between. So in all fairness, so between my first figure show and between my figure competitions, because they both were in the same year.
Yeah.
And when I made my transition to women's physique, there was an 8-year gap in there. So from 2008 to 2016, I was just learning all that I could about, you know, training, school, and yeah, finishing college was like a huge, like, I had to get that done. That was just a big commitment, right? I wanted to compete during college, but it was just not, it was not feasible with the workload that I had on me. And I was still learning. So, you know, I was kind of okay with that. I just needed to shift gears, and I needed to, you know, allow the organization to come around with women's physique, right? So, I mean, I could have jumped right into women's bodybuilding, but at that time, it was just not something that I thought I could do. I knew I was too big for figure, but I never saw myself at that point as being, you know, big enough for female bodybuilding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And then I mean, the thing that I thought was so awesome about this year is that they brought women's bodybuilding back because, you know, it's funny because Margie is the last person I saw her at the Olympia in 2015, the last time that Iris Kyle won. And I remember when Margie walked out, I was just like, the way, I mean, same as you, just carrying all this muscle, but so beautiful and feminine. I just was blown away. And then they took women's bodybuilding away. And I just thought, no, this is like, you know, this is the male, you know, the equivalent of the male Olympia. We have to, Mr. Olympia, we have to bring it back. So, you know, so exciting that they did. And then having 1 and 2 be such beautiful representatives of the sport is just like so cool. It was so cool. I called Anna didn't watch the whole Olympia with me, but I called her in and I was like, this is Drea and she's from Michigan. And Anna's like, she's so pretty. And I'm like, that's her Instagram name.
That's right. That's actually how I kind of came up with it, because I was new to Instagram, and I was like, a friend told me you should get an Instagram, and I was like, I don't know. Well, let me see if I can come up with the name that describes me but doesn't tell anybody that it's me right off the bat.
Yeah.
Right. Because like I didn't want, you know, because at the time I was a TA at Wayne State, and I was like, you know what, I don't really want my students looking me up, like, you know, but I wanted to see what the hype about Instagram is all about. So I was like, okay, if I had to pick, you know, 2 words that describe myself, something easy, I was like, well, pretty, muscle. And then it stuck.
Perfect.
It definitely stuck.
It was perfect. So my daughter was there when you had accepted, you know, when you won and Bob called you over, and I just loved it so much because, you know, you mentioned God. He said, how did this happen? And you said, only God. And Anna and I looked at each other just like little tear, just like, oh, here she is representing, you know, Christianity. And it was so great. It was so great.
Yeah. And I told my mom before I left, I said, you know what, if I had a doubt whether or not it was God, when they moved it to my birthday, it was awful. I was sealed on the deal. I was like, okay, I hear you loud and clear. There's no other explanation. Like, really.
What a present. Best birthday present ever, right?
Oh, ever. You talk about things that will change your life. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And yeah, I mean, I still, when I watch the video, I get a little choked up because, you know, it's just, you have so many different prayers, you know, and petitions of God, and for him to deliver in that way, you know, that one scripture that says, you know, he's able to do exceedingly and abundant above all that we can ever ask. It's like that was one of those moments for me. It was like, I still look at it, I'm like, wow. Wow.
So great.
And the coolest part, I think, still is that I think Linda knew, Alina knew, they knew the potential that I had. And I mean, I may have been approached by one other lady, Isabel. She kind of would tell me, I think you can do this. But not many other people really saw me as being somebody who could come through so quickly and win. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, God gives you those little cues when things start happening fast like that. Like, okay, he's telling you, okay, go this way. This is where my grace is going to keep you. Go this way. And it's like, you just follow each step. You know, he reveals a little more light at the next step and you take the next step. But, you know, for people who I had interviews with more recently, muscular development, Dennis James, and they're like, we had no clue who you even were. Like, and you just came through, you just blew the doors off. It's like,
Yep.
I'm like, well, that's the way God sometimes does things.
It was so crazy. I know it was Amy who enlightened me when Amy Landry and I podcasted, and she was saying that. She's like, yeah, Drea. And I was like, oh, and that's when I started following you. Like, so it was only a couple of months ago I started following you on Instagram.
Wow.
You know, I just was like, oh, and then, you know, to see it, I was like, oh my goodness, this girl is like, she's going to the Olympia. Like, after you had won the Winds of Strength, I just was like, this is a sealed deal. She's going to be right up there. It was just happened so fast.
Yeah, faster than I would have even imagined.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew after last year, you know, because I had just gotten into women's bodybuilding. So I thought for sure, okay, I knew once I told John I wanted to go pro, I said, okay, because I mean, things just started to fall in place. I got a job working at one of the hospitals down here as a trainer. So I knew I had access to a gym, and I did my internship there. So it was like God was aligning these pieces. And I said, okay, this can be good. I've got, you know, equipment that I can use, whether it's on my lunch, before work, after work. I was teaching group exercise classes. I'm like, okay, Lord, I feel like I can do this. You know, and after some prayer, and I talked to John, and it was like, okay, the pieces were there. John's like, yeah, let's do it. 2018, 5 shows, boom, got the pro card. And I knew then, I said, okay, well, I want to try to get to the Olympia if I can.
Yeah.
And, you know, prayed about it, put it on my vision board. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And then my first women's physique show, my pro debut, I got 11th. And then it was like, oh man. But it was even that happening was I believe God's, like, it was God's hand in it, because I needed to go to Toronto. I didn't even know if I was going to make it to Toronto, because John's brother fell into a coma. And it's like, okay, he can't go with me. He can't drive me. How am I going to get there? So we've got a friend, Lynn, and her husband. She's a client of John's and friend of mine. She said, you know what? I think I can go. And she rode with me. She drove me there. And that's when Margie had her chat with me after the show. Linda and Alina came over and they talked to me about, and one of the judges, 2 of the judges actually, you know, they were like, you know, we think you were very, very good, but you were just in the wrong division. Yeah. And, you know, after that, I said, okay, even Bob Ciccarillo, he's talking to me on stage. I'm like, wow, we're on stage. But, you know, it became very clear that, you know, God had a different place for me. He was basically notching out, you know, a place for me better than what I had in mind. Yep. You know, so that became, okay, you know, I got to take a step back. I got to make sure I'm following his lead, because this is where he wants me to go. And now I have to do my part. I have to put the plan in place to move into that. So I had less than 30 days and I had to go to Chicago, and Amy was doing Chicago. Yeah. So I reached out to her because I had met her right before I went pro. We were talking about working with Kenny Wallach, and, you know, how, you know, working with him could maybe bring me into getting that pro card. And it did. It worked great. So Amy and I kind of started this friendship, and I reached out and I said, hey, are you planning to go to the Chicago, bro? And she's like, yeah, I'm planning to compete. I was like, oh, me too. I want to go. You think I could ride with you? And she's like, girls trip, let's go. And, you know, I told her, I was like, don't worry, I'll cover your gas. I got you on food, coffee, whatever you need. I just knew, you know, I going into that prep, you know, I knew that, you know, John was going to have me working a little bit harder. So I didn't know whether it was going to be a good thing for me to jump on the road and try to drive. Even though it's a short drive, you know, I just hadn't done that while I was in prep before. So, you know, she was like, you know, let's go. And we both did pretty good at that show. I came in second, and we both came home with some prize money. And it was funny. We got to the hotel venue. So I got to tell this because Amy could like really get a good laugh. She was having a leak in her bathroom, and I was having a problem with my key card getting in the door. So I had no problems until we went to go get tanned. We went to go get tanned. We came back and it was like, really? So I'm sitting outside of the door on the floor, and the rooms were, there was one of those like adjoining rooms with like the door. Yeah. So the lady next door to me, I've got hotel security telling her, ma'am, can we potentially get into your room? We have an issue next door. And she's like, well, my husband's not here. I'm not comfortable. And I can't be mad at her, right? But I was just like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, it's time for me to eat. I'm tired. I want to get off my feet and go to sleep. But sure enough, I had to just calm myself down. I said, okay, what do you know about when things like that happen, right? It's like, okay, something good is coming.
Yeah.
Just calm yourself down, relax, just pray and let God sort through the rest.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, it was because John wasn't with me at that time. He was on his way the next day, but I was like, all right. And then the next day, he was like, boom, second place. I was floating on a cloud. It was like, wow, okay, cool. Yeah, so it's been an exciting ride.
I love that. It's so new to you that you have this, like this puppy-eyed joy about, you know what I mean? You're just like, because some people have been working for something so long, so hard that they, you're just like, you're like blown away by these other people that you're competing against, like they're celebrities, even though you're right on, it's just, I love that. I love that it's also new to you, that it's just like almost a surprise to you too. And that's super.
Yeah. And I'm looking at a lot of it with such fresh eyes. I haven't, to put it in a way that I think will be appropriate. I haven't been exposed to some of the negative things that some of the people of the past have been, affected by. I've heard that, when the Olympia was under different ownership, right before they took it away, the company, I believe, is AMI, it was definitely a different type of engagement between the ownership and the athletes. So that part of the story, for them is really different, because many of the girls really felt as though the company came in, they had no concept of what Joe Weider's vision really was and what it really meant to him. It was just a business for them. So the fact that women's bodybuilding became so, disposable to them, a lot of girls kind of felt as though, bitterness was something that they could allow to creep in if they weren't careful.
Well, and we need to pay respect to these women that paved the way, because I just feel like you can't take away women's bodybuilding, because that paved the way for bikini
Fitness.
And figure and fitness and wellness and physique and bodybuilding. You take away it's like taking away the cornerstone of it all,
Exactly. The mother of all of the female divisions. Yeah. And I think that, so many, and that becomes something, honestly, Deborah, that I kind of ponder sometimes, how do I, as now the representative of the division, get people to understand that, the way you used to see it, or the way it was portrayed, by, some of the old ownership, the women are too big, they're too muscular, we don't like the look. Right. How do we change that? So that's where, I can only be me, but at the same time, I still have this gift of a platform to speak. And it's definitely something that I don't want to take lightly, because, it has been interesting to see some people's reaction. We haven't seen a pretty girl in a long time, as much as I want to say, thank you, I appreciate that. But there are pretty female bodybuilders. Absolutely. So, they never went away. They never went away. It's just, things with, the ownership changed, and there was no input from the competitors, or I believe probably not even many of the fans. Ask the fans what they think. Do they still want to see it? Because there still has been a following.
Absolutely. When we disrespect a division of the sport, especially women, then you're just, you can't say you love bodybuilding but start picking and choosing which ones you're going to glorify. I think that's really wrong,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
because that translates to how we portray women. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They come in all shapes and sizes. Everyone has different goals. Everyone has different dreams. And we're, you know, that's part of what I'm trying to do with the podcast. You know, I have bikini competitors, you know, all the way up to women's bodybuilders. And you know, Kim Nichols is going to be on in a couple of weeks. So I'm super excited, you know, to hear from her, because she was, you know, one of the women that paved the way, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly. And it is, I think every single division should be comprised of people who really don't mind speaking out and saying, you know,
Yeah.
what happened was wrong.
Yeah.
And if that could happen to one division,
Absolutely.
let no other division think that they are safe.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where, you know, I kudos to the people who do take a stand to, you know, say and acknowledge that it's back at the Olympia, the Miss Olympia, and it deserves to be back. And it absolutely should not ever be taken away again.
Right. Right. And here you are being this humble representative. It's just super exciting. So let's talk about, so how do you feel about, you're already thinking about competing next year, right? Does that put a lot of pressure on you? Because, I mean, you're going to be up against Margie again.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it does, but it's more with regard to me about making sure that I do better than I did for 2020.
Yeah.
So every time I get done doing a show, John and I immediately put together like side by sides of, you know, how I looked on the stage at this show versus the next show. And the homework starts there. So, you know, I've already sat down and gotten my list together of things that I want to work on. He's got his list of things to work on. But, you know, I think that as long as God gives you a gift, you know, it reminds me of the scripture of the talents. And when he gave the talents, you know, he gave to the one, 5, 10. I mean, and that's what they multiplied it into, I should say. But, you know, you're responsible for making sure that you do the best that you can with what you've been given. And I mean, it's another way that we can honor him. I keep one of those little scriptures, little sayings, quotes on my vision board. It says, what you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift back to God. So, you know, I definitely try to make sure that, although, yes, I know I'm going to be getting back on stage with Margie. Who knows, maybe Iris will come this year since she wasn't able to compete. But, you know, I definitely look more at what is it that I know that I need to do to get better, because I knew if I gave my very best, you know, and those were the days, thinking that way was what got me through some of the tough days, right? You know, God expects me to do my very best. You know, I can't ask for him to bless it if I don't do my absolute best.
Yeah.
And I mean, that I can't tell you how many days that got me out of bed, got clothes on. Sometimes it was got pajamas on. And I was just like, you know, go in the basement, get the cardio done, or get to the gym, hurry up and get it done, because you know this is what you are supposed to be doing to actually see this dream come to pass. So that's my driving force for the year. You know, how am I going to make sure that I bring my very best, and I absolutely can look back and say, when I do the next side by sides, that what I did this year was even better than what I did last year.
Yeah. So I think it's really great that, I mean, not everyone has such a blessing that they're able to have such a clear painted picture of what their purpose is. So, you know, that you're just running with it is really awesome. What do you think that you, so are you just going to wait till the next Olympia, or are you going to do a show in between then? Have you guys made
I'm going to do the Rising Phoenix again. It's definitely still important to me that I do it because it's and my mom is kind of biased. She's like, I think the Rising Phoenix is the ultimate show. You know, she's of that mindset. You just get so much more. You get a car, you get the money. But, you know, it's still a very prestigious event for us. I mean, if you had to compare it to another show, it's like the Arnold for us. And And that should definitely still hold, in my opinion, a high priority placing for any female bodybuilder who's in the sport or who is looking to come into the sport, because it is what kept the sport with its heartbeat when it was taken away from the Olympia.
Yeah.
So definitely that one. And hopefully the way that they time it, it should be 2 weeks just before the Olympia again. So I'm praying that that's still the case, but those are the two shows that I have my eye on. I thought about doing, another show, because in my mind, I wondered, what it would be like to do the Tampa Pro. But I have to take a step back and think about what it is that I want to portray. Nothing against any other female bodybuilder who has qualified for the Olympia and can return, like our top 5 girls. If they want to do another show, in between, hey, have at it. I have to live by my own convictions. So I feel as though I need to give the other ladies an opportunity to get qualified for the Olympia and not do those shows.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, going back to, I wanted to ask, so how were things during the pandemic? Did you have gym access?
I did.
Okay.
Thank God. I did.
You're like, yeah,
So
we went with it.
yeah, but it was still definitely something that, every time you come out of the house, you just have to pray.
Yeah.
You have to pray. You have to trust God. Going to the grocery store.
Oh my word.
You just kind of pray.
Like, God, is there going to be chicken?
Right. Okay. Toilet paper. Oh my gosh. Mercy. It was like, there were certain stresses. Because like I said, I worked for a hospital system down here. So when the pandemic first began, I was working and then they closed the gym. So then just because they closed the gym didn't mean that there was not a need for us somewhere. So they routed us to a hospital. And so when they told us we were going down to the hospital, of course, my thoughts were just racing. Oh my gosh, what are they going to give us for personal protection, equipment to wear, what are the shifts going to be like? Because, hospitals, I've worked at a hospital before, like a full blown, like they call it inpatient. I've worked in that setting before when I was coming through right upon graduating from college. So, I did that for almost 5 years and I know, the ins and outs of how, working inpatient goes. They don't close. I worked every holiday. I worked every weekend. Again, back then I was a student. So, it was it was different than being full-time employed, but I knew, okay, I'm required to work 40 hours a week. What type of schedule are they getting ready to give me? And it was, I shouldn't say it was what I anticipated, but it was some of the things I anticipated. It was chaotic. It was not planned. It was a lot of people were just anxious and there was just a lot of uncertainty, fear, because people just really did not know what was really going to be coming down the pipe. So, that only lasted for me for 2 weeks. And I was working like the afternoon shift. I got offered to do midnights, but thank God it was at the very beginning of my prep. So, then I got furloughed. So then I was able to just kind of back off and just focus on training. And I'm glad I was able to, because there were some days that were kind of tough, because if I didn't have something to dial me into, focusing the energy here, some days may have been even tougher to try to get through. There were some tears some days because you just didn't know, right? There was just the uncertainty and, loved ones, checking on people, checking on family members, friends. It was just a lot. So, getting through the pandemic and having access to a gym was a blessing, a huge blessing. And then a lot of timing, right? So like trying to time, when we were going to go, based on when John was available, based on, when our police officers were going to be patrolling, because there was some engagement with them. I came to the gym one morning at like 4:30, 5 in the morning, and someone from the neighborhood called and said, we see a car over here. But I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding
Yeah.
me. It's 4 in the morning, go to bed. But, you know, I'm thankful that, you know, during that time, it definitely caused us to grow closer with the owners of the gym, and John and I, and our friends, our clients. It was interesting to see, but, you know, thank God, a lot of prayer, and we made it.
It was a really hard time. And you know, it seems like either people work was crazy, they were working and work was crazy, or they didn't have anything to do and they were just home, or you had people who were focused on contest prep. This is kind of my circle. And it was like, I'm so glad I wasn't one of those people. Like, I was working a lot, and that was fine with me, because I think I would have gone crazy because I didn't have gym access for a couple of months. And then I found out, like you, one of the gyms was kind of open but boarded up. But that got shut down a couple of times too, because again, people were snitching.
Yeah. It's like, dude, I'm trying to get my qualification here. I mean, because, you know, prepping for Omaha, I had to, at a certain point, I had to go to the gym. Like,
Right.
I got stuff at home. And look, I tell people this all the time, clients, friends,
Yeah.
having stuff at home is great. You're gonna have a certain, you know, amount of gusto, depending on the day at home. But I guarantee you, you are going to work harder when you go to the gym. That's just the way it is. When you walk through the threshold of the door, you know, there's a certain expectation. You came here, you drove, you got in the car, you had a pre-workout. The expectation is you came here to do some work.
I know. It's the truth. It's like, it's an event. You, like you said, you made time for it. You had to go there. When you're at home, you're like, you're looking over at your weights. You're like, there they are. Maybe I'll.
My big thing was, I'll do it after I get a nap. And I was like, okay, we got to stop this. Cause like after the nap turns into, it's the next morning. Like, no. And you got to have that internal dialogue with yourself. Like, okay, no, I'm not going to go there today. Today, we're going to get this body up and we're going to make an effort to go.
Right. That's hilarious. So I'm curious, are you a person that needs a lot of sleep, or are you, do you run on a little bit of sleep? How's your body?
I'm a person who likes to get as much as sleep as she can.
Yeah.
But if duty is calling and, you know, I have to try to make arrangements, then I just go with it. Because I mean, once I got into the second prep right before the Rising Phoenix, I was not sleeping as much as I wanted to, but I just had to kind of go with it. You know, I had to make sure that I was getting those workouts in. So, you know, some days were, you know, try to catch the nap. Some days were, you know what, hurry up and just get it done. So that way you can try to get to sleep. So, you know, that I tried not to think about it a whole lot, because some days, you know, John would look at me and he could tell I was frustrated, and he was like, okay, don't worry, we'll figure it out, you know. So then we started, you know, just trying a few different things like teas, and we didn't really get into, you know, too many sleep aids, but I tried a lot of different teas, and some of the ones that I found ended up working really good. So that was a plus.
Okay. So are you not like, is your schedule pretty crazy, and you're not like, are your days consistent, or do you do this kind of like, sometimes I train at 10 o'clock in the morning and sometimes I got to train at 5 o'clock. Do you have that? Is that?
I try to keep it consistent. I'm still more intuitive to train in the morning when I'm fresh out of bed, because that's when I think my energy is the highest.
Okay.
But if I need to be flexible, then, so what I've been doing, I would say probably for the last 3 weeks, I've been getting up and doing my cardio. That way, at least my cardio is out of the way. And then if John's available later to train, okay. Or if my workout partner is available later to train, then okay. But at least I don't have this cardio looming over me to do later in the day. Because during prep, I mean, the goal is to do my cardio as close to bed as I can.
Okay.
So that, and you can see how that could lend itself to maybe not going right to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, John and I were very deliberate in doing that because, it's just like when some people do fasted cardio.
Yeah.
For me, we kind of reversed that. So it was like, I was doing cardio shortly before bed, preparing to enter the fasted state.
Yeah.
So that way, when I got up, I was actually probably, sometimes 4 to 5 pounds lighter than I was before I went to bed.
It's funny that
Yeah,
you say that.
it's a science to it.
Yeah,
it's
but no, I did
interesting.
the same thing in 2017 when I went into prep, because I would train sometime during the day and then I would take Anna to our clubhouse down the apartments and I would walk on the treadmill, and it was usually 7-8 o'clock at night for, depending on how long or how far in. And that actually has always worked out very well for me too, for weight loss, to do cardio at night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would really like to have a treadmill and just be able to incorporate that.
Yeah,
It's my favorite.
because once you're in prep, sometimes that is a much better option.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes my wardrobe, I mean, I was getting downstairs working out in pajama pants, walking on the treadmill. It was like, hey, I just got to get it done. But that definitely plays a role, I think, in the package that I brought to the stage, because that type of timing really, really, and honestly, I mean, I'll be honest, going to the gym, sometimes I had a window. So if I was going to the gym to do cardio, I would try to get there sometime between midnight and like 2 a.m. And it's great because there's nobody there. Or, I mean, if there was someone there, it was like the same person every day, a few days a week, and they weren't there long. So it was just, it was really peaceful. Yeah. And I grew to really enjoy that. So a part of me misses it a little bit, but I'm going to enjoy this time that I've got off to do my schedule the way I want.
So how much cardio are you incorporating now as you go into like your improvement season? You still are
anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. So I just give myself the flexibility. Like yesterday, I only did 50 minutes. It's only 10 minutes, but you know what? I gave myself 50 minutes, and I just said, you know what? Right now, I need to just focus on enjoying my off season, because I told John, I was like, he knows me. It's like a switch. Once he tells me we're getting ready to start, the switch goes on, and that's it. I mean, tunnel vision.
Yeah. And so have you ever cheated on your diet?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, I cheated on my diet this past prep. And a lot of competitors don't want to be honest. Oh, I never cheat on my diet. Yeah, okay.
And my favorite questions. I just
absolutely. And I told my coach exactly what I did.
Right. That's the
and
key.
I mean, because he can't help me navigate it if I didn't at least be honest, right? When I tell you what the cheat was, you're probably gonna look at me like, really? So my cheat was, I had 2 rice cakes with no almond butter or peanut butter on them, and I added some Splenda to my tea. But it was not on the plan.
That's pathetic.
So it's still a cheat. It's still a cheat.
It's true.
So
it's true. So
and I think that more people should be honest about that, because I tell John often, let's be honest about what we do, right? It's extreme. It's extreme. And your body starts to tell you that it recognizes that it's extreme.
Right.
And certain things, yes, you can have that mental fortitude to really overcome. But I think you grow into that. So, I mean, I don't think that should ever be overlooked, especially if you're dealing with someone who has the aspiration of, going pro, going to the Olympia. Yeah. Be honest. We are not above having the cravings. You just have learned the art of refining how you deal with them.
Yeah, it is.
But what we do is extreme.
The discipline is learned for sure, because I mean, that's what people talk about.
Absolutely.
Do it less and less, and Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast earlier, and that's what Fuad was saying, how somebody had asked, how do you avoid cheating on your diet? And he was like, we have the same cravings you do. We just don't,
Yes,
follow through.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
that's really sweet.
Absolutely. And I mean, like you said, you grow into it. I mean, I remember the first time back in 2016 when John told me, you really should be eating your fish with nothing on it. And I mean, I looked at him, I said, like, nothing? Like, no pepper, no salt, no.
So
He
mustard.
said, well, that's the way you need to do it if you're trying to come in as lean as you can.
Sure.
And I stood at the kitchen and I looked at that fish and I cried. I cried because I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this. And it was like, I had to really like take a step back and I was like, ooh, I'm like, this is literally just eating cooked flesh. But you know what? It definitely was a moment where I had to really go within and say, do I really want it?
Right.
And those are the moments, it's something that I'll never forget, but it took some time to grow into. The next time I got ready for a prep, I said, okay, he is going to tell me to do this.
Right.
Are you sure you really want to do this? And, when the answer became yes, then everything else became easy. So, just always make sure you know what your why is.
Yeah.
And that will usually give you at least a little, because one of the competitors, Mayla Ash and I, because I keep in touch with the girls, many of them.
Yeah.
We got to chatting on Instagram and she's like, I'm just trying to make it to 2:00 today. She's like, as long as I can make it to 2:00 today, that's it. And I told her, I said, that's so good. I'm going to use that. And, we would get a little dialogue going, like just about every day, every other day. All right, how you feeling today? She's like, I'm just trying to make it to 12:00 today.
Is that what
it becomes a, you gotta make it work. Sometimes you can't think about the whole day. You gotta think about just making it to this point in the day, and then you can try to work through the rest later.
Yeah.
You really have to be ready to make the mental shift. With competing or with getting into the best shape of your life. And that's kind of how like I said, I got into it. I looked in the mirror and I wasn't happy with what I saw. So, I had to be ready to make whatever changes I needed to make, because you're not going to be given anything. You're definitely going to earn it. But you have to have a strong why.
Right.
Yeah. And you need to be clear about your why. And sometimes your why changes, but this is where, I recommend people just do that self-inventory once a year, at the top of the year when you get your calendar, or on your birthday, or whatever that day is at the end of the year, December 31, whatever that is, when you sit down to start evaluating what your goals are going to be for the next 3 years, 5 years, for the next 6 months. You have to chop it down into smaller pieces, but you need to ask yourself, what am I looking to gain from doing this? And that will give you usually all you need to keep that fire lit.
Yeah. Give me a little tear.
Oh, big hug.
So great. So, are we going to get to train together? Because we live in the same state.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're thinking about coming up to your neck of the woods, because there's a show coming soon. There should be a show coming soon. I hope Mike is keeping his schedule and, the buckles. But yeah, so, I'll keep you posted, and I was going to say, we can get some training in. Just come out and hang out for the weekend.
That'd be so great. Yeah, you can come stay with me.
Cool. I may snore a little bit, because sometimes when I get in some good sleep after working out, sorry. It's rare, but yay, heads up.
Totally great. It's funny. I'll say this on camera, but so I don't know if you know this, but my job is I clean. Basically, I have a cleaning company, and so I clean the apartment buildings that we live in, and they have the models that they show the people,
Yes, I used to be a leasing consultant when I was in college.
Yeah, so we have the model. So, so as long as I tell my boss, you could stay in one of those model.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because when we had people come from corporate office, they would stay in the model.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
we had 2 of them.
yeah, yes, we do.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
1 bedroom and a 2 bedroom. Yeah.
And we had studio in 1 bedroom. That is so cool.
Nice.
You speak the language, girl.
So what is your tell me a couple of things that are on your what did you call it? Your board, your
Oh, my vision board.
yeah. Tell me a couple
So
things.
I'm actually still working on it, but I think I've narrowed down what it is that I want. And the kind of interesting thing for me is I try to create a virtual vision board too that I keep on my phone. So I just create a photo grid of, the things that, and I create a photo album for it of the things that, I'm wanting to keep before me consistently. So definitely a second Olympia title.
Yeah.
That's on my vision board. A second Rising Phoenix title.
Yeah.
And I want to travel to Venice Beach this year. That's a like a huge thing. And I want to go to visit the Bev Francis gym, her powerhouse out on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of toying around with the idea of maybe adding on a few pieces of pretty large workout equipment. I'm trying to narrow down whether I want an elliptical or a stair mill, but I'm leaning more towards an elliptical. So that and some sort of home gym. I'm looking at like a Bowflex, kind of like the all-in-one things. Yeah. So I mean those are on my vision board. For sure. And then I'm gonna add it, but it's not really something I want to say as a priority for this year, but it's definitely on my 5-year plan. Getting back in school. So I definitely want to, pursue the next degree. I feel like we can always have, that extra little bit of learning along the way. And it definitely still gives me some structure. Rather than just studying. It's not that I can't handle studying on my own, right? But again, there's a certain structure that I like with certain coursework where, you got the 101 course before you get to 102, 103. And looking at, some of the courses that are offered with the next degree, some of them really interest me. They've got a sports nutrition course that goes a little bit more in depth with performance and physiology like that, that interests me. So that, and again, as a trainer, as somebody who represents the sport, I think that every little bit of, piece of knowledge that I can get, that's something that I'll have that I can hopefully impart to someone else who may be, at a point of a plateau or at a point of, what do they do next because they've tried X, Y, and Z that hasn't worked. So, I think that that's something that over the next 2 years, I definitely want to see come to fruition. So, starting to select the schools now. So I've kind of narrowed it down to 2 and, they're going to go on the vision board.
That's awesome. I feel you there. When I went back to college when I was going through my divorce when I was 35, and I think I'm going to go back again after Anna goes off to college. So 2 more years. I really would like to do something more in psychology. I love human behavior and all of I love fascinating, So
yes. And psychology never changes. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but it rarely changes. You just have different people with other pieces, that you have to navigate through. So I've only studied the sports psychology part of it because that was a part of my coursework, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
And it's really good, I think, to keep with your education because the sport is constantly evolving. We are constantly learning new things about nutrition and exercise. Evidence that supports certain things that maybe we thought, but we weren't sure. And it's really fascinating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really is. And, the end goal is always to have some sort of lifestyle modification or behavior modification, so that it supports, the enrichment of other areas of life. But, to be able to dive into it, because I mean, we're dealing with an organization that is worldwide, right? So many different things play into the psychology, socioeconomic background, what type of access they have to equipment, things like that, and their self-perception based on, family, dynamics. There's a lot that goes into it, and we're dealing again with people globally. I mean, we're in a social media era, right? So, we can connect with people who are not just in Michigan, who are not just in the United States. There's so many other factors that, you can, I think with the proper education, start to consider that otherwise maybe you would not if you didn't, take the time to educate yourself.
Some of these countries have, their bodybuilders are, you have one or two main bodybuilders in their country and they're just absolutely glorified, and then you have, here in the United States where we have thousands of pro bodybuilders and you don't even know who they all are. So, you can get somebody like yourself just sliding on up and taking the Olympia titles.
Sneaking in. I won't be able to be so quiet this time around, though. So,
gonna come in.
But this is why it's important, that I take the time to do podcasts like these. So thank you so much for having me on. Again, I've got a message and a voice that hopefully whoever it's meant to reach, it will. Not everybody's going to be, in tune with every athlete, right? That's the joy of it, right? Some people who support this athlete really connect with that one and vice versa. So, it's whoever it is that, I'm supposed to be able to help and reach as well as you help and reach, so it's worth the time. And it's truly, it's not I have to, it's a we get to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're such a great representative. I'm just so happy for you, Drea. Really happy for you.
Don't change your story after we work out now.
I'll be like, she's awful.
She's crazy.
I think that would be awesome.
You won't die, I can promise that.
I will live to see another day.
Indeed. And tell the story.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, this was such a pleasure. We will, I'll reach out again. I'd love to have you on again. You're so, and you can
anytime
talk some more about, you could talk about some of your coaching strategies or some of the things that you implement with clients. I think that would be very informative.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, anytime.
Okay. Well, I'm holding you to it. It's on camera.
Okay. I'm a woman of the word. I will keep the word. And, I think it's with anything, always communicate. Like you said earlier in the podcast, things come up for people. Just being able to communicate, hey, you know what, this week doesn't work. Next week we can, but yeah, I mean, it would be my honor and my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, this was a pleasure for me. I know that you're busy and you're popular and you're famous.
I'm still just Drea. I still haven't, and I think I don't know if I'll ever really change that because, I'm still me.
Yeah.
And I told John long ago, I said, I don't care how many titles I get. This was long before I even went pro.
Yeah.
I don't care how many titles I get. I'm not going to be the haughty, snooty, arrogant, stuck up. I'm better than anybody else because, after working in the hospital and you see people who cannot get up, who cannot leave, it humbles you.
Yeah.
It humbles you.
Yeah.
And, some of these people, they were fine. They were just fine hours ago, days ago. And then boom, just like that, their entire life changed. So for anybody who thinks that they are invincible, caution.
Yeah.
Caution.
Yeah.
Caution. It's only by God's grace that you are able to do anything that you do.
Yep. Yeah. At the end of the day, we all end up pretty much the same, so.
And again, we are reliant on God's grace to keep us, and especially during these times.
This is so
My
true.
goodness. I mean,
It's funny because
Yeah.
I had an appointment with my therapist it was 2 days ago, and she said the same thing. She said, and this is bold of me to say, but she said, what are people who don't have a reliance on a higher power doing during these times? Because then all you can do is rely on yourself, and we know what happens when we rely on ourselves. It doesn't work out.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's a beautiful.
I was just having that conversation with a friend of mine this morning. It's like, she's like, I'm afraid of giving over all power and control. And I'm like, okay, but what has that gotten you?
Right. It's the only thing that keeps me going, honestly, because all I can say is I've done the best I could do today. I messed up a ton. I always, you always mess up, and all you can do is give it to God and go through and start all over again tomorrow. So,
Yeah, one day at a time.
Yes. Sometimes just till 2:00, right?
There you go. Exactly. Just make it to 2:00. Just make it to lunchtime. Okay.
I'm gonna put it on a t-shirt. Just make it to 2:00.
Okay, and I will be in line to get me one of those shirts. Make mine pink and black.
All right. It's done.
Okay, cool. Well, keep me posted on when you'd like to get together again next, and I'll be ready to get myself prepared.
Perfect. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, doll.
All right. Well, I'm gonna end this by saying thanks, Drea, for being here. And I think more important than ever, this podcast tells you that healthy looks different on everybody. We need to remember that. So
Absolutely.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay,
Talk to you soon.
you too. Talk to you soon.